The aftermath of the battle left the safe house in a state of disarray. Bullet holes popped the walls, shattered glass lay scattered across the floor, and the furniture was overturned and broken. Adaora, Chinedu, and Ebere stood amidst the chaos, their breathing heavy, eyes wide with disbelief at the devastation that had just unfolded. For a moment there was silence. The world outside seemed to have paused, as if holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. The first rays of dawn filtered through the bullet-riddled windows, casting a pale light over the destruction. Chinedu wiped sweat from his brow, his mind still racing. He knew they couldn't stay here much longer. The safe house had been compromised, and Obinna would likely send more men once he realized the first wave had failed. "We need to move," Chinedu finally said, his voice hoarse but steady. "We can't stay here. It's only a matter of time before they come back." Adaora nodded, her eyes drifting to Ebere, who sat slumped on the couch, her face pale and her body trembling. The fear that had gripped her throughout the night was slowly giving way to exhaustion. Adaora knelt beside her, taking her sister's hands in her own. "Ebere, we have to leave," she whispered softly. "It's not safe here anymore. But I promise, we'll find somewhere safe. Chinedu will protect us." Ebere's eyes were filled with tears, but she nodded weakly. "I'm so sorry, Adaora, for everything. This is all my fault." "No, it's not," Adaora said firmly, squeezing her sister's hands. "We're in this together. We'll get through it together." Chinedu stepped closer, his presence reassuring. "I've already made arrangements," he said. "There's another place, more secure than this. We'll be safe there, at least for a while." The drive to the new safe house was quiet, tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. The streets of Lagos were just beginning to stir as the city woke up, unaware of the deadly battle that had taken place just hours earlier. Chinedu drove cautiously, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors for any sign of pursuit. Adaora sat in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on the road ahead, while Ebere dozed fitfully in the back, her exhaustion finally overcoming her fear. As they neared their destination, Chinedu's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face hardening as he read the message. "What is it?" Adaora asked, sensing his unease. Chinedu hesitated for a moment before answering. "It's Obinna. He knows we escaped. He's not giving up." Adora's heart sank. "What do we do now?" Chinedu's jaw clenched. "We stick to the plan. We'll be safe at the next location. But we have to be ready for anything." The new safe house was located in a secluded part of the city, far from the bustling streets and prying eyes. It was an unassuming building, much like the last, but fortified even more heavily. Chinedu's men were already there, waiting to escort them inside. As they settled in, the tension in the air slowly began to dissipate, though it never fully left. Adaora and Ebere found a moment of respite, sitting together on a worn-out sofa, while Chinedu and his men set up additional security measures. "Do you think we'll ever be free of this?" Ebere asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Adaora sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know, Ebere. But we have to keep fighting. We can't let Obinna win." Ebere nodded, though her eyes were still clouded with doubts. "I just want things to go back to the way they were before all of this." Adaora gave her a sad smile. "Me too. But we can't go back. We can only move forward." Chinedu entered the room, his expression serious but calm. "We're secure for now," he said. "But we need to keep a low profile. No unnecessary movements. We'll stay here until it's safe to move again." Adaora nodded in agreement, though a part of her wondered if they would ever truly be safe. The threat of Obinna loomed over them like a dark cloud, always present, always ready to strike. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the safe house began to ease, though it never disappeared completely. Chinedu and his men maintained a strict security routine, always vigilant, always prepared for the worst. During this time, Adaora and Chinedu grew closer. They spent long hours talking, sharing stories of their lives before the chaos that had brought them together. Adaora found comfort in Chinedu's strength and determination, while Chinedu admired Adora's resilience and unwavering loyalty to her sister. That one night, as they sat together in the dimly lit living room, Adaora found herself opening up to Chinedu in a way she hadn't with anyone else. "Do you ever think about what life will be like after all this?" she asked quietly. Chinedu glanced at her, surprised by the question. I try not to think too far ahead, he admitted. In this line of work, you learn to live in the moment. But, yes, sometimes I wonder. What do you want? Adaora pressed gently. When this is all over. Chinedu was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. I want peace, he finally said. I want to be able to live without constantly looking over my shoulder, without always expecting the worst. Adaora nodded. I want that too. For me, for Ebere, for us. Chinedu looked at her then, his eyes softening. We'll get there, Adaora. I promise you that. The days continued to pass, and though the threat of Obinna never truly faded, Adaora began to believe in Chinedu's promise. She started to imagine a future beyond the walls of the safe house, a future where she and Ebere could live without fear, where Chinedu could find the peace he longed for. But the reality of their situation was never far from her mind. And as much as she wanted to believe in a happy ending, Adaora knew that they would have to fight for it every step of the way. One night, as they were preparing for bed, Chinedu received another message. His face darkened as he read it, and Adaora felt a familiar knot of hair tighten in her chest. What is it? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Chinedu looked up at her, his expression grim. Obinna, he's making his move. Adora's heart pounded in her chest. What do we do? Chinedu's gaze was steely. We prepare. This ends tonight. The final showdown was inevitable. Chinedu and his men fortified the safe house even further, setting traps and positioning themselves for the attack they knew was coming. Adaora and Ebere were given strict instructions to stay hidden, but Adaora couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to do more. As the night wore on, the tension in the air became almost unbearable. Every sound, every creak of the floorboards, sent Adora's heart racing. She clutched Ebere's hand tightly, trying to stay calm for both their sakes. And then, it happened. The sound of gunfire echoed through the safe house, and Adora's blood ran cold. Chinedu's voice rang out, shouting orders, followed by the unmistakable sound of a battle. Adaora held Ebere close, her heart pounding in her chest. They had been through so much already, but this was the final test. They could only hope that Chinedu's preparations would be enough. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was only minutes. The gunfire, the shouting, the chaos, it was all too much. Adaora could hardly breathe, her fear threatening to overwhelm her. But then, as suddenly as it had started, it was over. The gunfire stopped and a deafening silence fell over the safe house. Adaora hesitated for a moment, her heart in her throat. And then, slowly, she emerged from her hiding place, pulling Ebere along with her. The sight that greeted her was one she would never forget. The safe house was a war zone, littered with debris and the bodies of Obinna's men. Chinedu stood in the middle of it all, breathing heavily, his gun still in hand. His eyes met Adora's, and in that moment, she knew it was over. They had won, but the victory was bittersweet. The cost had been high, and the scars of this battle would remain with them forever. Yet, as Adaora stood there, taking in the scene, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived. They had made it through the darkness, and now, maybe, just maybe, they could find the peace they had fought so hard for. Chinedu approached her, his expression softening as he reached out to take her hand. It's over, he said quietly. You're safe now. Adaora nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Thank you, Chinedu, for everything. Chinedu gave her a small, tired smile. You don't have to thank me, Adaora. I promised I'd protect you, and I meant it. As the first light of dawn began to break through the windows, casting a warm glow over the battered safe house, Adaora felt a sense of calm that she hadn't experienced in what felt like a lifetime. The danger had passed, but the emotional toll of everything they had been through was still heavy on her heart. Chinedu, ever vigilant, scanned the room one last time, ensuring there were no lingering threats. His men, though exhausted, began clearing the bodies and securing the perimeter. Adaora could see the weariness in their eyes, but also a quiet satisfaction. They had survived another battle. Ebere, who had been silently clutching Adora's arm, finally spoke up. Is it really over? Her voice trembled with a mix of fear and hope. Chinedu turned to her, his expression softening. Yes, Ebere. It's over. Obinna won't be coming after you again. Ebere's shoulders sagged in relief, and she let out a shaky breath. I didn't think we'd make it out of this. Adaora hugged her sister tightly. We did. And now, we're going to rebuild our lives. As they embraced, Chinedu's phone buzzed once more. He glanced at the screen and then looked at Adaora, his face serious but not alarmed. It's a message from my contacts. Obinna's remaining men have been apprehended. They won't be a threat to anyone anymore. The news brought a wave of relief, but Adaora could see the weight of everything that had happened still hanging on Chinedu's shoulders. She approached him, placing a hand on his arm. You did it, Chinedu. You kept your promise. Chinedu looked into her eyes, his usual stoic demeanor faltering slightly as he allowed himself to feel the magnitude of what they had accomplished. I couldn't have done it without you, Adaora. You're stronger than you know. Adaora smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in a long while. We were strong together. For a moment, they stood there in the quiet aftermath, the chaos of the night finally giving way to a sense of peace. The bond between them had been forged in fire, and now, in the cool light of morning, they both knew it was unbreakable. As the morning sun fully illuminated the room, Chinedu turned to his men. Let's finish up here and get everyone out. It's time to go home. The word home hung in the air, carrying with it a new meaning. For so long, Adaora and Ebere had been running, never truly feeling safe anywhere. But now, with Obinna gone and the threat eliminated, they could finally begin to think about what home might look like. The safe house was cleared, and Chinedu led Adaora and Ebere to the waiting vehicle. As they drove through the streets of Lagos, which were now bathed in the golden light of morning, Adaora felt a sense of possibility. The city, once a place of danger and fear, now seemed full of promise. They arrived at Chinedu's private estate, a place he had kept secret until now. It was a sanctuary, tucked away from the bustling city, surrounded by lush greenery and high walls that offered both privacy and security. For the first time in a long while, Adaora felt like she could breathe freely. As they stepped inside the estate, Ebere's eyes widened in amazement. It's beautiful, she whispered, taking in the serene surroundings. Chinedu nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. It's not much, but it's safe. You can stay here for as long as you need. Adaora looked around, taking in the peaceful atmosphere. Thank you, Chinedu, for everything. We couldn't have done this without you. Chinedu met her gaze, his eyes softening. You don't need to thank me, Adaora. I'm just glad you're both safe. In the days that followed, life slowly began to return to a sense of normalcy. Ebere started to heal, both physically and emotionally, while Adaora began to think about what the future might hold. She knew that there were still challenges ahead, memories to process, and wounds to mend, but she also knew that they were stronger now, ready to face whatever came next. Chinedu became a constant presence in their lives, not just as a protector, but as a friend and confidant. The bond between him and Adaora deepened with each passing day, built on trust, respect, and a shared understanding of the struggles they had endured. One evening, as the sun set over the estate, casting a warm glow over the garden, Adaora and Chinedu found themselves sitting together on the porch, enjoying the quiet of the evening. You've done so much for us, Adaora said softly, breaking the silence. But I don't know what's next for you. What do you want now, Chinedu? Chinedu was quiet for a moment, considering her question. For the first time in a long time, I'm not sure, he admitted. I've spent so many years in this line of work, always focused on the next mission, the next threat. But now, Adaora looked at him, sensing the shift in his demeanor. Now, you have a chance to live differently, she said gently. Chinedu met her gaze, and for the first time, Adaora saw a vulnerability in his eyes. Maybe I do, he said quietly. But I don't know how. Adaora reached out, taking his hand in hers. You don't have to figure it out alone. We're here, Chinedu. We can find our way forward together. Chinedu squeezed her hand, a small smile playing on his lips. Together, he echoed. As they sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Adaora felt a sense of peace. The darkness that had once threatened to consume them had passed, and now, in the quiet of the evening, they could finally look to the future with hope. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Adaora knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The journey that had begun with fear and uncertainty had led them to this moment, a moment of healing, of new beginnings, and of a love that had grown stronger with every battle they had fought side by side. The story of Adaora, Ebere, and Chinedu was far from over. But as they sat together, bathed in the soft glow of the night, they knew that they had already overcome the greatest challenge of all. And now, they were ready to face whatever came next together. In the days that followed, the tranquility of Chinedu's estate became a place of healing for both Adaora and Ebere. The serene environment offered them a chance to reflect on everything they had been through and to start planning for the future. Ebere, who had been traumatized by the events, slowly began to find her strength again. With Adaora's constant support and the security that Chinedu provided, she started to regain her confidence. She spent her days walking through the gardens, appreciating the beauty around her, and finding solace in the quiet moments of the day. She also began to focus on her passion for art, something she had long neglected during the chaos of her life with Obinna. Painting became her therapy, and soon, the walls of her room were adorned with colorful, expressive canvases that reflected both her pain and her hope. Adaora, too, found herself changing. The fear and anxiety that had once defined her existence were slowly giving way to a sense of purpose. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but she was determined to rebuild her life. She began exploring opportunities to continue her work in finance, reaching out to old contacts and making plans to start over. She wanted to regain her independence, not just for herself, but for Ebere as well. Chinedu, meanwhile, was grappling with his own transformation. For years, his life had been defined by danger and violence, always on the move, always ready for the next threat. But now, with the immediate danger gone, he found himself questioning what he wanted for his future. The estate, once a fortress for protection, now felt like a place where he could build something new. And Adaora was a part of that vision. One evening, after a particularly beautiful sunset, Chinedu approached Adaora while she was sitting on the porch, lost in thought. He sat down beside her, the comfortable silence between them speaking vowels. "What are you thinking about?" he asked gently, his voice breaking the quiet. Adaora smiled softly. "I'm thinking about the future. About what comes next for us. For me and Ebere." Chinedu nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "And what do you see?" Adaora hesitated for a moment before answering. "I see a life where we are no longer running. A life where Ebere can pursue her dreams, and I can find my place again. I want to live without fear, to build something lasting and real." Chinedu turned to her, his expression serious. "And what about us, Adaora? What do you see for us?" Adaora met his gaze, her heart pounding. The bond between them had grown stronger with each passing day, and she knew that she had feelings for him that went beyond gratitude. But she also knew that their relationship had been forged in extraordinary circumstances, and she wasn't sure what it would look like in a more ordinary world. "I don't know, Chinedu," she admitted honestly. "But I do know that I care about you. You've been my protector, my friend, and I don't want to lose that." Chinedu reached out, taking her hand in his. "You won't lose me, Adaora. I'm here for you, for both of you. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Adaora felt a warmth spread through her at his words. Together, she repeated, the word holding more meaning than she could express. As the days turned into weeks, the three of them began to settle into a new routine. Ebere continued to focus on her art, even holding a small private exhibition at the estate for a few trusted friends and contacts. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and it gave her the confidence to start thinking about a career in art. Adaora, on the other hand, made strides in rebuilding her professional life. With Chinedu's support, she was able to secure a position at a respected financial firm in Lagos. It wasn't easy at first. There were whispers about her past, about her connection to Obinna, but Adaora held her head high, determined to prove herself on her own merits. As for Chinedu, he found himself drawn to a quieter life. He began to step back from the world of private security, delegating more responsibilities to his trusted men. Instead, he focused on managing his estate and finding ways to contribute to the community. He established a charity in memory of those who had lost their lives during the conflict, providing support for victims of violence and helping them rebuild their lives. But through it all, the connection between Adaora and Chinedu only deepened. Their relationship evolved from one of mutual dependence to one of genuine love and respect. They spent their evenings together, sharing their dreams and fears, and finding comfort in each other's presence. The walls that had once protected them now served as the foundation for a new life, one built on trust, hope, and the promise of a brighter future. One night, as they sat together under the stars, Chinedu turned to Adaora, his expression serious but filled with warmth. Adaora, I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through. And I want you to know that I love you. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I want you in it. Will you stay with me? Will you build this life with me? Adaora felt her heart swell with emotion. She had never imagined that her life would take this path, but now, sitting beside Chinedu, she knew that she had found something real and lasting. She took his hand, her voice steady as she replied, "Yes, Chinedu. I love you too, and I want to build this life with you. Together." And so, under the night sky, with the stars as their witnesses, Adaora and Chinedu made a promise to each other, a promise of love, of partnership, and of a future filled with hope and possibilities. They had faced the darkness together, and now, they were ready to embrace the light. As Adaora and Chinedu embraced their newfound commitment to each other, life on the estate became a reflection of their deepening bond. Their days were filled with moments of quiet joy, laughter, and a sense of peace that neither had ever thought possible. For the first time in a long while, Adaora could see a future that wasn't clouded by fear or uncertainty. Ebere, too, began to thrive in this new chapter of their lives. Her passion for art blossomed, and with Chinedu's connections, she secured a spot in a prestigious Lagos art gallery. Her paintings, once a private outlet for her emotions, were now admired by critics and buyers alike. The recognition boosted her confidence, and she started to believe in her talent and potential. One evening, after a particularly successful gallery showing, Ebere joined Adaora and Chinedu for dinner on the estate's terrace. The air was warm, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the night as they shared a meal and talked about their day. "I can't believe how far we've come," Ebere said, her voice filled with awe. "A few months ago, I was afraid to even think about the future, and now, I feel like I'm actually living." Adaora smiled at her sister, pride swelling in her chest. "You deserve it, Ebere. You've worked so hard, and I'm so proud of you." Chinedu nodded in agreement. "You've both been through so much, but you've come out stronger on the other side. This is just the beginning for you, Ebere. There's so much more ahead." Ebere blushed at the praise, but her smile was wide. "Thank you, Chinedu. And thank you both for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." As they continued their dinner, the conversation shifted to lighter topics: future plans, dreams, and hopes. The darkness that had once loomed over them was gone, replaced by a sense of optimism and excitement for what lay ahead. Later that night, after Ebere had retired to her room, Adaora and Chinedu lingered on the terrace, enjoying the quiet of the night. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, a reminder of the peace they had found together. Chinedu reached out and took Adora's hand, his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. "I've been thinking, Adaora," he began, his voice soft. "About the future, about us." Adaora turned to him, her heart fluttering. "What about it?" Chinedu hesitated for a moment, as if carefully choosing his words. "I want to build a life with you, Adaora. Not just here, on this estate, but a life where we are truly partners. Where we're a family." Adora's breath caught in her throat. She had imagined this moment, but hearing the words from Chinedu made it feel all the more real. "Chinedu, are you asking?" He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made her heart swell. "I am. Adaora, will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop for a moment as Adaora processed his words. She had been through so much, heartache, fear, loss, but in Chinedu, she had found someone who loved her for who she was, someone who had stood by her side through the darkest of times. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Chinedu. Yes, I'll marry you." Chinedu's smile grew wider as he pulled her into his arms, holding her close as the stars twinkled above them. In that moment, all the pain and struggle they had endured seemed to fade away, replaced by the promise of a future filled with love, joy, and endless possibilities. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations for the wedding. Adaora and Ebere, with Chinedu's help, began planning a small, intimate ceremony on the estate. They wanted the day to be a celebration of their journey, surrounded by the people who had supported them along the way. What is going to happen at the wedding is Obinna coming back find out in part 4. Thank you so much for watching, and please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoy this story, give it a thumbs up, comment and share. Thank you and God bless you.